And we're going live. Yeah. Okay, looks like we're live. It's
Are we in?
yeah, we're on. We're
We're
in.
here. Hello, everyone.
Hello everyone. Have we have another exciting podcast, and I say exciting not because it's not a figure of speech. It's like, hey everybody, we have an exciting show ahead of us, because every time that we have someone who's willing to take time and come here and talk to us, and not just pontificate about political situation and talk about who did what to whom and haven't the Jews suffered enough and all of that, and but really is willing to dig in and really look into what actually is going on, what's behind the picture that's behind the picture. Why is there still anti-Semitism, anti-Jewish sentiment, even now when we should have been enjoying overwhelming support from the world? We're still seeing the reverse almost, right after within a few days. So I think everybody has those questions, and I haven't heard too many answers. So I heard the logical answers. I have to say, Bill Maher just the other day, did you see that his Christmas
Yeah.
special? He was like,
Yep.
right, he basically he took the Hasbara, the last 10 years of Israeli Hasbara, and condensed it into his opening monologue. And Jews were here, Arabs were here. We gave you this, you didn't take it. We tried to do this, you refused. Right, the usual spiel, which every logical person would say, makes sense. They have a
According to
point.
logic, there should if logic was involved, we should be finished with this already.
Exactly, and yet,
The,
parallel
the
to
new
that,
Harvard poll that just came out that most students think Israel is an oppressor,
I
right?
was about to
So
say
like,
exactly 90 something percent, right? 18 to 24. I think that Israel is an oppressor and that they should be done with Israel and all of that. So we're clearly dealing with an irrational problem, or rather, maybe irrational is a scary word, a very emotional problem. So we need to try to feel what's going on and feel our way through it. And I heard I sat with a friend of mine the other day. He's a fan of ours. He's following. He's watching, and he said to me that after the seventh, what started is, at first he found himself screaming in the shelter, right, in the bomb shelter. That was the first couple of weeks, and after that, it's sort of the screams kind of died down, and it turned into this quiet despair. And now he's just kind of walking around, observing and thinking that his reasoning cannot solve what's going on. He cannot explain away what's happening. He cannot solve it with logic alone, and maybe something else is needed. So I gave him a hug. I said, "This is, you're making great progress." because I think, when we're certain that we know the answer, that's how that line go. If you think you understand the situation, then if you don't understand the situation, no, how does it? If you don't understand the situation, then it means you're on the right track. Or if you think you understand the situation, you have no clue what's going on. So that's that. And what do you think, Seth? Are things getting clearer on your end, or
well, for thousands of years, we have been shaped by this negative attitude coming at us from the nations of the world. These are our formative experiences, from Sinai to Egypt and the Romans and the Persians and the Spanish and in Germany and in America. All of these negative attitudes that we receive from the nations of the world have always developed us, and it's about time that we wake the hell up and understand that it's something that doesn't matter what country we're in, it comes, but how do we work with that force? Or it's like a husband and a wife, like thinking there's never going to be conflict, and every time there's a conflict, no, it's totally different. You're saying, how do we work with these to build? You're not going to eradicate marriages or destroy the spouse. You need to figure out how do these forces work together to create something. So we have everything. We have the Torah. We can study. We have the internet. We have the land of Israel. We have everything that's been given to us through all these generations, and now it's time to
receive it.
understand, to receive it, and move forward in a correct way. There's nothing lacking anymore. It's really, everything is in our hands now, and we're so fortunate to get to be engaged in this, and from week to week to be talking to others who also are not interested in the same old, but want to stand on the shoulders of the giants who came before us and figure out together, that's the main part, together, what is our next move.
Exactly. So I'm very happy we have a great talk coming up. I just chatted with our guest before we started, and this is the Thejewfunction. If you're joining through the YouTube, the regular channel, please post your questions. We'll try to take in some questions if we have anything that's relevant. In any case, feel free to share this, spread this far and wide. The algorithms aren't helping us, so anything you can do can help us.
They're literally hurting us.
Yeah, they're literally. It's true.
We are shadow banned.
Yeah. Not only shadow banned, we're also YouTube is actively calling some of our content anti-Semitic. So that's
this week.
Yeah, violating their community guidelines. So with all that, the deck stacked nicely against us. I want to start our show. We have our nice ominous music to set us up. Maybe we'll fix that. But I have the great honor to invite a guest that he's an editor, he's a journalist, he's an author. He's actually working on a new book, and his book is different because it's going to tell us about solutions to anti-Semitism, not just the problems. So after the intro, we'll have Howard Lovy with us. Stay tuned. It's coming up in a second.
The Jew saw them all, beat them all, and is now what he always was. All things are mortal but the Jew. All other forces pass, but he remains. What is the secret of his immortality?
Howard, that was your cue to turn on your camera.
Oh, sorry. Wow, I was so blown away by that introduction. I love the graphics on that. Wonderful.
Thank you. Those are covers from all our first 22 podcast episodes. It's all audio, but it's very highly musical, highly auditorially produced.
I was so mesmerized, I forgot to turn on my camera. So.
Thanks for the compliment. And we invite people to tune into that. It's easy listening. Every episode is like 35, 45 minutes long, and it really follows the history of the Jewish people. And it's very apropos to talk about it because we're really we are the product of our history, and I'm kind of amazed how when you hear the voices that came after the 7th from around the world, so many young people, so ill-informed. I'm not even blaming them, right? Like I think a lot of them are really suffering from terrible ignorance, from the influence of a terrible environment. That it's almost like, where's how can they even think differently when they're surrounded with so much misinformation and fake news and all of that? Which is why we feel it's very important, for at least for us, to understand our history and where we're coming from, and what brought us to the 7th. And at least from our point of view, Seth and I were looking at the events leading up to the 7th, and it's kind of there were everything that was happening was highlighted by that extreme hate that erupted in Israel over the past year. Whether it was justified or not, whether the right is in the wrong or the left is in the right, it doesn't matter. What matters is that the country was about to be split in two, and when we talk about it for years now, about how this Jewish disunity, when we were at each other's necks, that's when our enemies pounced. That's when nature is sort of closing and forcing us to shed those separators and those tags, and dawn only one. Sadly, the Nazis got it right. Just one star. There's no Star of David for liberals, or Star of David for conservatives. It's just one star, and that's what we saw. So I'm curious, Howard. Before you tell us a little bit about what you're working on, maybe just tell us where did that catch you, and kind of your just feeling about what's happening, and feel free.
That's interesting. What you said about the Jewish disunity, or the Israeli at least disunity before October 7, and you're drawing I guess a causal relationship, and that's very biblical of you. Every time in the Bible when Jews were in a state of disunity, God sent an enemy to punish them. I guess my question to you is that what you're saying?
First of all, you recognize that is, hold on a second. I mean, first of all, let's take a moment of silence that somebody actually recognized what we've been reading together every single year for the last few thousand years. Most people don't even get that. So yeah, without saying that's what we're saying, that's pretty much exactly what we're saying.
Interesting.
And we're shocked that somebody actually also sees it.
Yeah. No, I mean it's a pattern. It's controversial in a modern context because how can you say that Jews deserved pogroms and the Holocaust and things like that?
Hold on a sec. Just to say deserve. I mean, if you jump off a building, do you deserve to splatter on the ground? We're not even saying deserve. We're just saying it's a natural system. But sorry, please continue.
Oh, cause and effect. I get it. Yeah.
Simply laws of nature, except we're reading them incorrectly. That's the thing, because we're sort of oblivious to the cause. We think that it doesn't exist, and that there's something else that compelled us to unite. It's not like, oh, you moved away, you crossed the road on red, and you got hit by a car, and now you're like, cars are out to get me. Cars are anti-Semitic, and like, no, you crossed the road on red. But in this case,
so carry on.
Yeah. But no, in this case, it's even worse because it's not even about some sort of a passive. We're just like misbehaved. We're saying there's more to that. We really are called to display this unity, this care above everything. That's what we're saying, really.
Interesting. There's a danger there, I think, in terms of bringing across the idea that Jews bring anti-Semitism on themselves, and that's a common trope you hear among anti-Semites. I'm so used to being the interviewer rather than the interviewee. My question to you is there a danger of that kind of perception?
I think, and Seth can answer it from his own personal perspective because we've both been at it for a while, and the way we got to it is first by looking at what we Jews collectively were doing to combat anti-Semitism, and seeing that none of it worked. Not only none of it worked, things got worse. It's almost as if to spite, right? The more you tried to convince everyone how great you are, the harsher the reaction. And people are seeing now, oh, we thought these people were our friends, and it turns out they hate Jews. We thought these women organizations cared for all women. Turns out they hate Jewish women. It's shocking. It's hard to grasp. So my question back to you is it really such a crazy notion that maybe we are doing something wrong than it is to explain this extreme hate for no apparent reason, so to speak? Aren't we all humans? Shouldn't we all be treated equally by everyone? And that's a kind of I think a classic modern, entitled human point of view.
Yeah,
I deserve stuff. Like, what do you mean you deserve? Deserve by whom? We live in a.
I'm not sure I quite would go that far. I get the historical or at least biblical cause and effect. Because Jews behave this way, God called upon its enemies to teach us a lesson. But in a modern context, I'm more of the opinion that it's you, not me. There's nothing I am doing as a Jew, and there's nothing I can do as a Jew for you to love me, or at least not want to murder me. It's all you. And if you want to talk about, the root causes, then how long do you have?
No, tell
It's
us. We want to know.
um,
Give us your best material.
well, it's not my material. People have been studying this for a long time. It's a combination of religious doctrine from Christianity and Islam, um, ethno-nationalist theories from the 19th and 20th centuries about the idea of racial purity and portraying Jews as something other. And then the one that's most prevalent today is the conspiracy theory, myths about Jewish power and Jewish money and Jewish influence and the secret cabal, the protocols of the elders of Zion, falsely claiming a Jewish global conspiracy for world domination. And the anti-Israel sentiment is simply an outcropping of the same old anti-Jewish conspiracy. They say, and it's not just me, Deborah Lipstadt says this a lot, the U.S. anti-Semitism envoy, that it's the oldest conspiracy theory on earth.
Yeah.
And if you scratch enough conspiracy theories, beneath the surface, you're going to have, it's going to be anti-Semitic, and that's at the root of a lot of it. So is there anything that we or I personally as a Jew can do to stop anti-Semitism? No, but there are things that I can do to fight it on a practical level, and that's where we get into my book. I'm not going to make an anti-Semite love me, but what I can do is fight back using the legal system, using social media in a positive way, fighting back on campus in a way that Jews can fight back on campus. So there are practical ways for us to fight it. Whether we can truly end it, I have no idea. I'd win the Nobel Prize if I could figure out a way.
Howard, what does being successful in this look like through your lens? If you were able to implement all the things that you're writing about, because for example, your new book, you are saying that it's enough talking, like here's practical things that we can do about it, right? So, okay, so we do those practical things, and then we don't just do things without some goal in mind. So you must have some goal of why we should do these things. So if everybody adopts these things that you're talking about, where do we end up?
We end up with legal and moral and political recourse, and it's hard because people think we have more power than we really do. What are we, 0.2% of the world population? But I think there are so if the world wanted to, they could wipe us out. They've tried in the past, but I think there are enough good people in the world to see that we can actually assert
Hold on,
our
Howard, hold on.
rights.
Could they wipe us out? I mean, is it possible to
Well,
wipe us out?
have you
And
have you
people,
have you taken a look at the at the map of the tiny map of Israel with the
Yeah.
entire
no,
Arab
but I mean
world?
the, the sorry, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think numerically we don't stand a chance. They've tried and they haven't succeeded because there's always a tiny remnant that survives and passes on the information and the traditions and the books to their children.
Almost as if we say, almost as if the system does not allow the full destruction of the Jews because of that, important role that they have to eventually play out in the system. That's how we see it, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're like, yes, you can't eliminate all the hubs in the network because the network needs hubs, but you can definitely reduce their numbers significantly. They're not a lot to begin with. But you are right to say that we can easily, putting network science aside for a second, we're easily outnumbered. We joined late the PR and the social media arena. We joined actually into almost like lured into a trap laid by the Muslim community, the pro-Palestinian community, the anti-Israeli, anti-Jewish community. For decades, our last guest talked about it. He actually heard from one of the original planners of it, like in the 90s, that they were going to do it. So 20 some odd years before this whole thing broke out.
Mm-hmm.
So we can lose the popularity contest overnight, as Biden told Netanyahu just recently. Public opinion can change overnight. We can be easily outnumbered. The UN gave the mandate for Israel; they can revoke that for all intents and purposes. Russia is already not playing on our side so much. China, we know where they stand. They're waiting for the big guys to So America can also, if not today, in 10 years, that old generation that knew the old Israel might be gone. So
Oh
it's a
yeah,
very
yeah.
precarious situation, Howard. What are you suggesting?
I'm suggesting what Jews are very good at, which is education and debate, and argument, and winning the battle of ideas. And that's hard right now because the odds seem to be stacked against us. So when do you engage in an anti-Semite, and when do you block and ignore? These are questions that people have actually studied. What kind of use of social media, for example, can we use, that'll actually do some good. When you're arguing with an anti-Semite, you're not going to convert the anti-Semite. You're going to actually reach other people who might be lurking, might be reading what you're writing and hasn't made up their mind yet. That's who we're after. When back to what you said earlier about how was all planned. Yeah, I agree. I think I read something. Let me get the exact figure. The country of Qatar, uh, um, they donated. I don't have the exact number now.
Hundreds
Number,
and hundreds of millions.
yeah,
Billions.
to universities. Yeah, billions. It's in the billions to universities ever since 9/11.
Yeah.
So this has been in the works. It's not just, the pro-Palestinian cause is not just fashion among young people. It was planned. It was planned at the university level, and now we're seeing it come out in horribly, violent ways. When I was in college in the 80s, I experienced that kind of anti-Semitism at my college campus. But it was nowhere near the intensity that today's Jewish kids are feeling it. And that was not just a coincidence, but it was planned that way. It dovetails with this idea of the world is um, divided into conquered and the conqueror, colonialists, and the oppressed, and the oppressor, which to some degree is true. But then you get at these tropes of the Jew as the oppressor, which makes no sense numerically, historically. But this is um, the perception right now. You mentioned that Harvard poll, where they say that how many, what was it? How many people, how many young people trust
Yeah,
Jews
over
or
90
view them
something
as the oppressor?
percent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's amazing. And to some degree, it was a loaded question, but I think we have a big problem on our hands when it comes to young people. And I say that, there's I have children who are in college now and members of Gen Z, and I just picked up one of my kids from college in Detroit yesterday for the holiday break, and above the overhang on one of the highway was a big sign that said "Get Zionists out of government." And both my son and I looked at it, and we had a discussion about it, about, well, what do they mean by Zionists in government? And I said, well, it's code for Jew. It's just the acceptable way of saying Jews out of
Oh,
government.
does it
And
look like 1930s Germany right now here to you?
well, the only comparison I can have is, since I wasn't in 1930s Germany, is I grew up on stories from my grandfather, who grew up in Hungary before the war, and saw things happening slowly. The pogroms before the Holocaust. Who the drumming people out of professions and out of college. And I think some of that, I'm always careful to compare anything to the Holocaust. Not everything is the Holocaust, but there are some conditions that are comparable. When it comes to, I see a sign that says Zionists out of government in college. They're being driven out of clubs that sometimes, in many cases, Jews have founded. We're being chased out of leftist spaces that we were actively, members of.
The question is, if this podcast were happening 20 years ago, I would say, okay, we need to open it up, talk to people, as you said, debate, discuss, try to, Ben Shapiro approach, but he's one guy. How can you really cope with it at such a scale? That we're not talking about a few bad apples here and there. We're talking about generations that were raised on that, on that sentiment, both in Israel, outside of Israel, and to compound that issue, the matter of media. 20, 30 years ago, still few channels through which people would get their media across. If you control that, if you influence that, if you have a say there, if you have presence, you can be part of the conversation. Now I can get my news from my next door neighbor, and that's it. I got my news. How do you are we really able to deal with it today?
Yeah.
In
I
the same
understand
way?
the skepticism, and I talked with the publisher about my book, and he was skeptical that anything could be done. He said, "Well, let's just let the IDF do its job, and everything else will fall into place." But the old saying that all politics is local is very much true. We can do things that we can do. It depends on our expertise. It depends on our sphere of influence. It depends on what we do for a living. It depends on what we're good at doing. In many cases, we can speak up at our local government meeting that wants to pass a resolution against the so-called genocide of Palestinians in Gaza, things like that. We can speak up locally. We can speak up in our own virtual spheres. I went through all the phases of grief after October 7, until I decided, okay, well, what can I do? Well, the only thing I know how to do reasonably well is write. So I decided that's what I can do. I can write this book. And not only that, I can get some like-minded people in a Kickstarter campaign to help me write it, because it's a communal effort. I don't have all the answers, but a lot of other people do, and they can tell me their success stories. What have you done on the local level that made things a little better? What have you done in your own profession at the workplace that made things a little better? In my own literary community, it's a huge problem. Writers are supposed to be on the front lines of, seeing, scratching below the surface and seeing what's really happening, and they're failing because so many writers that I once had respect for are calling this a genocide in Gaza. When obviously it's tragic. It's horrible when any innocent person dies, but this is not genocide. Words have meanings.
Right.
So what I'm doing in my local community is writing some pieces talking about the need for the literary community to speak up about what's really happening. And it's
And
an
how did
uphill
they
battle.
how did they receive your message?
Well, in one case, there was a poet I used to follow on X, and we were over the years we were in touch professionally about different things. And then I see in her on her X feed that Israel is committing genocide, and usually I don't say anything, but this was a person I had respected. This was a poet and a teacher. So I said something, and she immediately just blocked me. You know, um, multiply that by a lot of other writers I used to have respect for, but seeing things in such a black and white way, and also, putting Jews on the side of the oppressor, of the oppressor, oppressed equation just makes absolutely no sense to me when you think about it. And I don't think I'm taken seriously because, well, I'm a Jew and I'm a Zionist. So, of course, I'll say that. And it's hard to break through sort of that barrier.
I think in most abuse. Oh, Leah, you wanted to say something?
No. Keep
I
going.
think in like in abusive relationships, for example, suppose there's an abusive relationship where someone's being abused, let's say physically. So of course, the guy who's physically beating the woman is wrong, right? But what can she do? She needs to change her behavior. She needs to get out of there. Nobody make a clip and say she's causing it out of what I'm saying here. She needs to change. Like, she's the one, even though he's wrong for hitting her, 100%, right? But her destiny is in her hands to get out of this, to change her behaviors, meaning get out of the situation, be around people who are supportive, go find somebody who's good to you, go be in an environment that's healthy. So without a doubt, the guy who's hitting is in the wrong. But I think if we look in our lives at all these different places where things are problems, we can say that the problem could be coming from the outside, meaning like this hand is punching me in the face, or something is coming from the outside. But at the end of the day, the only thing that I can really do begins with my personal behavior, my thought process, my emotional responses to things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So here,
But
I think
that's
again,
sort
it comes.
of, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, you're not interrupting. I'm trying
okay.
to
Yeah.
spark this.
Well, I guess, that's sort of what I'm saying is, you don't have to put up with the abuse, but you also don't have to panic. A lot of Jews feel helpless right now, in the face of this, people crowding, thousands and thousands of people crowding the streets, chanting not just pro-Palestinian uh, uh, chants, but from the river to the sea, pro genocidal, chants, and so you feel overwhelmed. So what I can do as the person, I guess, being abused is calm down and think logically. What can I personally do? I'm not sure the analogy works because we can't physically separate ourselves from the world. And I think that's, we can't get out of the abusive situation because the
So far, we
world
only have one
is
planet.
abusive. Yeah, right. And but that is an issue with many Jews. Do we turn inward? Many progressive Jews, especially, are feeling very
Where would be the most
despondent.
safe? Where would be the
Yeah.
most safe place? We all go work. We work with people from every you go to your office, or you go to the workplace. You go to the supermarket. You're living in America. Or, you and I do. Leo's in Israel, but even in Israel, you're around people from many different countries, many different religions, many different cultures. We're not going to leave that. We're not going to go to a Jewish supermarket, and go to a Jewish only office building. That's never happening. But in what way can we find, who are the people that we can begin to find safety with and begin to build forces with? Because
Mhm.
I want to broaden this picture even further, because I think that people felt after the Holocaust that, okay, we'll take the Jews out of Germany, out of Europe, out of the places that obviously had a big dislike towards them, and put them in a land of their own. Whatever, there are problems there as well, but let's try that. And that was sort of like a step of, let's create a separation. A lot of Jews also moved to America, granted, and that's a whole other story. And we can be asking that question now, 80 years on. Is it working? And I heard people saying also some questioning that relationship as well, because there are a lot of similarities to 1930s Germany, just in terms of what we know, right? Just what's records of
Jewish businesses being
being targeted, and
Jewish
changing attitudes, and
universities.
things that started as like riots on the streets and gradually gaining momentum and then changing government, all that stuff. It can really happen. Not saying it will happen in the same way necessarily as it did in Germany, but a lot of similar patterns.
Oh yeah, yeah. People are being
so
desensitized
just to finish the picture, so just to finish the picture, you'd think that after removing the Jews from Europe and from and putting them in their own country, we'll get quiet, and we got relative quiet a few decades. But now there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to remove. We can't remove ourselves, even to Seth's analogy. And I don't think, it's not that I'm being skeptical. I'm just being very realistic. I'm a very peace-loving guy. I interact with a lot of people. I have a lot of friends from different places, but I don't see us changing the minds of hundreds of thousands of people who want to kill Jews everywhere you go. So there's an issue here, and that's what we're trying to kind of.
I'm not sure you'll be able to change minds. We didn't even change minds during the few decades of relative peace. It came underground, was no longer fashionable. However, we did denazify Germany for the most part. So
it was expensive.
It was expensive. It took a lot of effort. It took generations. And it's not totally, as we know, it's not totally denazified today. However, you can't say that Germany is a Nazi country anymore. Is that possible now to denazify not just Gaza, but denazify the college campus? I don't know.
Can you denazify the eastern countries that don't like, Iran and its neighbors? I mean, there's a lot of countries that don't like Jews and the West. I mean, we're talking about worldviews apart.
Yeah. But right? You're talking about totalitarian governments. If you want to talk about Iran, there are a lot of pro-freedom Iranians who are allies to the Jewish community. You see that in Los Angeles all the time, where those are actual Iranians saying this is not what we want. And so same thing with Hamas. I think there are a lot of ordinary Palestinians who aren't exactly fans of Hamas. And once we get rid of Hamas, it'll be interesting to see, what the chances for peace are. I don't know.
I get a sense, Howard, that you're also an optimist of sorts, and you kind of see, yes, we suffered a terrible blow, but it definitely did not eliminate Israel. Every life is precious, but 1,000 people relative to the whole country, as sad as it is, it's a number you can live with. People die in car accidents and in other areas. It just doesn't feel as personal, right? And it's you can't really kind of. So
that's not what I'm saying.
No. I'm not putting words in your mouth. What I'm trying to say is. Yeah. It sounds, I'm kind of trying to follow your logic. It's like, okay, we will get over this as well, as we always do. We will, get over Gaza, get some relative quiet there. Maybe we'll get a year of peace and quiet. Then we'll have to deal with Lebanon, Hezbollah, perhaps, unless Iran, gets toppled or not. Whatever the geopolitics of the situation are, going to unfold, we'll get a chance to sort of collect ourselves, resume the conversation, the debate, the discussion, talk to people on a local level, show that Jews are okay, that you shouldn't want to kill them. Am I saying it right? Is it?
You're simplifying it a little bit. I'm probably a little more pessimistic than that.
So where's it going? Give us the, as Seth was saying, where do you see it going? Because Seth and I, we're interested in a solution to anti-Semitism. We don't want to live with the disease. We're not trying to manage the symptoms. We don't believe in that. And it's not a matter of belief. Nature doesn't work this way. In nature, if you go nature in its purest form, it's right. It's like, there's no place for you don't live with terrible symptoms. It's like you live or you die, or there's a purpose that has to sort of grow out of something. So we're looking for that, for a purpose, for a change of attitude towards the system as a whole. Where do you see this going?
I see dark times ahead for Jews, especially in the diaspora. But um, I guess I don't totally understand the system you're talking about. I guess I'm a little more pragmatic. Um, it is cyclical. When I back in 2000, I was managing editor at JTA, the Jewish Telegraphic Agency, and back then there was a lot of talk about what do we do in a post-anti-Semitic world. Now that anti-Semitism is gone, how do we foster Jewish unity? And I covered things like I went on one of the first Birthright Israel trips and covered that. Well, this is how we do it by bringing Jews to Israel to get back in touch with their roots and things like that. And the conversation was so totally different, because there was a feeling that anti-Semitism was over. When I was also sort of in charge of covering the peace talks between Arafat and Barak, and I was such an Oslo optimist at the time that I thought this is it.
Everybody
Here I
was.
am. This is historic. Barak offered Arafat the best offer he was ever going to get for a Palestinian state, and his answer was the Second Intifada. And that's when I became thoroughly disgusted, threw up my hands. I actually quit my job at JTA and moved back to Michigan and started writing about science and technology because I got so disgusted with it. I picked it up again in 2016 when I noticed anti-Semitism on the rise again. So it's cyclical, but this is a really, really bad cycle we're in for right now.
Howard, what do the Jews have to offer anybody if, okay, let's say anti-Semitism is totally gone. Okay? So are we, for example, the Aboriginal in Australia or the Cherokee in the United States? Are we just another little ethnic group with our own language and some culture? That's the question here, the real question. Anti-Semitism is gone. What do the Jews have to offer anybody?
Can we spring Seth? Do you mind if I?
No, let's just. I know where you want to ask the alien question.
Yeah, of course, because
I was prepared for the alien question. I actually
Okay,
had my
fine.
answer to
no,
that one.
because it's he said something here that got me. I was about to jump in. He said, "We're talking about when anti-Semitism is gone. How do we unite the Jewish world?"
So let's get to that in a minute. But let's ask this as a preliminary
okay,
lead up.
okay. So go ahead.
So if anti-Semitism is gone, what's left of these people? What do they? Okay, great. We have the Cherokee, we have the Navajo, and we have this other little group that does
Don't
their,
forget the gypsies.
they light their
Yeah.
candles, they hang their symbolic thing, they strap leather on their head, nice ancient customs like all the indigenous peoples. They have some ancient artifacts like all the indigenous peoples. And yalla, let's move on. Like we just carry on. We'll make some new inventions, some new robots, dishwasher.
In fact, it's surprising we survived that long. Like, there's no evolutionarily speaking, what set to follow Seth's line of thought, right? Just like those other.
Suppose the Incas and the Aztecs also lived. Okay, so this just I'm asking you, Howard, because I want to know when it's gone. Is it just the same as every other group?
Isn't that what we want? Don't we want to be treated
I'm
just
asking
like
you.
every other
Or
group?
we have our
We're-
opinion, but we're asking you.
We're not a proselytizing religion. We don't go out and seek converts. In fact, we make it really hard for you to convert. You have to really want to convert to Judaism if you really want to be a Jew.
Sure.
So I think the story. What I get out of Jewish history is we really just want to be left alone to do our thing. And my answer to what would you tell an alien is we're the world's oldest book club and debating society. This is, we love arguing amongst ourselves about the meaning of Torah and what God meant when he said this and what such and such a lesson is. And we extrapolated that, or expanded that into helping the world, because once the secular Jews were over debating the fine points of the Torah, we then debated the fine points of science and physics and everything else, and we get Einstein. So that's what we have to offer the world. We have science and knowledge and eager for debate and learning. And that's, even with anti-Semitism, that's what we have contributed to the world.
What is the greatest thing that the Jews could offer to the world? If we were left to be able to do that, if they would just leave us alone, what could we contribute?
Or maybe we're done. Maybe we've contributed already, and now we could just sort of coast.
Now just leave us alone and let us
Yeah.
move to Florida and coast, and just retire like everyone else.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, then we get into, we're into highly speculative territory. Are we a light into nations, and what does that mean?
You got 20 minutes to speculate, so we want to hear it.
I think what we have contributed in reality with the existence of anti-Semitism is just totally, completely amazing that I can't even imagine.
Right. Why don't they love us then, Howard? On paper, everything that's how we started. Everything should have been in our favor. Look at this guy. There's just so few of them, and they're doing all the right things in all the right places, and so many Nobel Prize winners, and some we should be the darlings of the world. Why are we?
Yeah.
Why aren't we that?
You're assuming that there's a logic to anti-Semitism.
Yes. Why is
the BDS backers? Say
you 100% are assuming there's a logic.
Yeah, there's a logic to every phenomenon in nature. You plant an orange, you get an orange. The process is very logical. You plant a sperm cell in a woman, you get a human baby, right? Only when it gets into human feelings we can see the logic, because we're part of it, right? It's hard to see the system from within the system. I agree to that. We fail miserably. Psychology can take us so far, but that's where I go back to our 3 pillars that I talked to you about before we started. There's patterns in history. And if this was the one-time thing, I would say, okay, let's pick up the pieces and try again. But 800 times, patterns in history.
When we look at
science,
when we look at the universities and we see that they're saying that Israel is the oppressor, the 3 of us understand what's going on here. It can't be, right? It's a tiny. You said 0.2% of the population. We could be squashed in a second. It can't be, right? All of this hatred against the Jews and all these conspiracies and
Arab population grew in Israel, right?
Okay, so if we're talking about logic, it can't be. But Howard, exactly like you said, all that money from Qatar and all of these things made this happen. It doesn't. If you just look at it from the outside, Jews are like, their heads exploding. How can you be calling me the oppressor? How can you be saying there's a genocide? We've had a female president. We have Arabs in the Knesset. You're allowed to have citizenship. All these things. How can you be saying this about us, right? It doesn't. That seems logical. But if you see the money from Qatar, etc., there's a cause and effect of how we got to this place. So it may seem illogical, but if you follow the money or understand what led to this, it's not illogical. It's logical. You just need to understand enough about what led us here, and then you see that it's not really illogical. It's all following the reason why everything's going on campuses now is exactly because it's been prepared for the last few decades to get us here. So,
and by the way, it would be easy actually if we discover that all this is one big religious misunderstanding, and the Muslims are just misreading the Quran, and they think they have to eliminate the Jews. They don't really see the verses that say that the Jews have to actually be part of the general system. It's a big religious misunderstanding. We either explain it or we have to wipe out the other half of the planet. But clearly that's not happening. And that's what we were driving at. So being left alone is weird, is a weird premise. And also keeping things as they are is a weird premise. That's what we're saying. It's weird. It's weird however you turn it. I mean, it's
right, and that's the political divisions, left and right, Democrat and Republican, and in the United States, we're very much of liberal Jews here are all about tikkun olam. That's the big buzzword. Repairing the world, and that means facing outward. That means helping immigrants and the oppressed. Conservative Jews are more, let's talk about a Jewish unity first. Let's help each other before we go out and help other people. And there's a push and pull between helping ourselves and helping everybody else. And I think that's an internal debate that I think that has nothing to do with anti-Semites or not. I think it's just a personal philosophy of what you do with your Judaism and what it means to be a Jew. The larger system, you're the experts in that, so I'll defer to you because it sounds like you have a well thought out philosophy behind it
Well,
that I kind
but
of lack.
philosophy aside, I want to ask you a personal question. Like, you think about it in this way: we grew up with this, first the Bible, which, like it or not, it could be religious or not, it doesn't matter. It's the book that influenced all of civilization. Everything that we have around us, certainly in Western civilization, is a product of a relationship to the Bible or some sort of a negation of that. But it's all related to that. There's very few things that are not somehow traced back to this book that was the first book in everybody's cabinet. So we're part of that story, that epic tale, like it or not, right? So I can say I don't believe it, but okay, but the world believes it, so we kind of stuck in there, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
in that book, they talk about Jews playing an important role. They talked about Jews coming back to Israel. They talk about all kinds of crazy stuff. Some of it we can see, with our eyes, some we can't. But they do say clearly that there is some sort of a relationship between Jews and the world. That somehow we're related. We're influencing the world. So I'm wondering, if, just as a game of imagination, how do you see us playing that role in the world today? Maybe that would be a good place to start. In addition to the fighting that we have to do, there's no question that we have to fight. But what do you think?
Well, I think no matter what we do in the world, even secular Jews feel very Jewish at their core, and seek out to do good in the world because of their Jewishness. I think because we have a culture around study and debate, I think many Jews are also into help the world through science and medicine. I think because we're oppressed and we have to laugh about it sometimes, we found an entire Hollywood industry based on entertaining people and laughing at ourselves. So what we can do is what we've already done. Maybe that's not the answer.
What does that mean? Hold on. What does that mean?
Yeah, what does it mean?
It means we're 0.2% of the world population, but we have an enormous outsized impact in medicine and science and entertainment. So that's what we've done. People see that as a conspiracy. I see that as us being out in the world, being Jews, and this is what we brought to the world.
If only we could turn off every Jewish invention. If someone hates us, we could just flip the switch and everything the Jews invented goes away for the people who hate us, right? No more internet for you, no more medicine for you, but we don't have.
People make the same argument with the BDS people. If you're going to boycott everything that's manufactured or invented in Israel, that's a lot of stuff you're going to have to not use, including your iPhones.
Go back to the caves. Exactly.
Yeah.
We want. So here's something that we didn't really talk about yet. And as far as being pessimists, I think we could sound pessimistic because we, for example, if you're going to go get a surgery or something, they're going to cut your body open, and when you recover, there's going to be some pain. So if you see that in front of you, you could call it a pessimist. But if you see the real big picture, it's going to, it will eventually, the idea is to be healthy. So I think we're pessimists. We're not really pessimists, but we're not naive. just because Leo and I are always talking like pie in the sky about something, not that it's our goal, meaning it's not that we're naive. We understand the surgery aspect of, or the difficult process, or going to the gym or whatever it is that feels uncomfortable in order to get to something. But we also don't want to dismiss this kind of epic piece of what we feel, and we didn't get to talk about it yet here, like what being a Jew is. Like, for example, in Christianity, they have Jesus, great guy, but one guy who was connected to God, right? In Islam, they have Muhammad, great guy, but one guy. Buddha, great guy, one guy. The Jews had this communal experience at Sinai where the entire nation had the experience of God, not just one guy. And that left some, our study, our experience together has led us to feel that had some impression on us. And then this light to the nations thing, there is some role beyond just being a Navajo or an Aztec or something. There's some role that I guess everyone has a role. Let's say that everyone on earth has a special role. We also feel that we have a special role. Okay. And to identify what that role is towards humanity.
Yeah.
I think we certainly can't do it. And we think we know what that is, but it's a communal thing that without connecting Howard Lovy to it and Fred Menachem and every, Dov Hikind and all the different people we're speaking to it, it's not something that any one of us can do. We don't have a Jesus like another religion. We have the whole community, the whole kahal, that we need to kind of come to it, we need to come to it collectively.
Sure. Yeah. And, so I'm speaking to you as a secular Jew, and I'm not a religious scholar in any way. So I'm answering your questions as a secular Jew. If you spoke to a religious Jew, you would get a different answer. Also,
we want your answer.
If I could bring it back to my Kickstarter, this is why I'm crowdfunding. Because I don't have the answers alone on the best ways to fight anti-Semitism, but a group of us do, and so that's the idea behind the crowd, making this a crowdfunded thing. But so every answer I've given you over the last hour has been from my perspective as the son and grandson of Holocaust survivors, but as a secular Jew, and someone who feels my Jewishness very strongly, but not necessarily in a religious way. But so together, we all have an answer, but I don't have the single answer.
No, and it's fine. By the way, we don't expect people to come here and everybody to have the answer or have the same answer. What we're trying to do is to strike a nerve, and I think that, as you said, we feel it, like the way religious and secular, both religious and secular Jews in Israel came together in response to what happened, in ways that nobody imagined they would see happening, right? Ever since the establishment of Israel. In fact, it was like not even when Ben-Gurion put it all together, he was like, there's nothing left of them anyway, just leave them alone. They don't need to even join the army. He was talking about a few hundred Orthodox Jews that came to Israel after the war. And then this portion of the nation grew, and they were not in it. And suddenly you see this, everybody's lending a shoulder. Everybody wants to be part of it. Even as politicians and certain small organizations are starting to, fight it out again up there, down here, people are seeing and feeling the power of that togetherness. Mm-hmm. And you don't see it in many other nations. You barely see it in any other nation. And all throughout history, you see examples of that. And this altruism, you see it. You see it in times of trouble. You see it just around the dinner table or in a holiday. It's always centered around that. It almost became a running joke, right? In every Hollywood movie or series where the Jews are there. It's almost like it's in the background of everything we're doing, except for some reason we don't think to ascribe to it any importance or any real strength, more than sort of a comforting idea. Oh well, we're together, well, as long as we're together. What we're saying is that there's something is hiding underneath that's much bigger, much stronger. We
Oh yeah,
that
I totally agree with that. Yeah,
and people feel it, in certain key moments in life. You felt it. We all feel it at some point.
sure. Well, especially
But
after October 7,
especially exactly, especially
I live in a rural area where there aren't a lot of Jews, but we had a vigil a week after October 7, and the few Jews and our allies that are here all got together in one place, and there was a feeling of comfort, like, okay, I'm not alone. So,
and it's a real feeling, and what we're saying is, uh, Bruce Lipton is a biologist, geneticist. He explored the whole idea of epigenetics and the influence of the environment, the medium, on the expression of genes, and he has this famous story about the caterpillar that lives and eats and just grows and grows and grows and eats, and things are going in one direction until one day everything stops, right? And it crawls into a cocoon, and it starts to, everything stops, starts to rot from within. And for all intents and purposes, this caterpillar is going to die, except there's a group of cells that they're called imaginal cells. Small group, a tiny group of cells. And this group kickstarts another process in the caterpillar that leads to the creation, to the development of a butterfly. Without that group of cells, and linearly, there's no straight line leading from A to B. It's almost like right? And that, in a way, maybe that's what we're saying, that we see examples of that in nature at large. You see it in small places, you see it in the human body, all different oppositions living together. And that's kind of what we're hoping to at least agree on with all of our guests, that somehow in this there's something tremendous hiding. Maybe we don't know what it is, but we hope that we can sort of just be part of that circle, that movement. Yeah. We really think that it can it can avert the next calamity, and not simply respond to it.
I totally agree. Yeah. I think, Jewish unity is something beyond the sum of its parts. And, I'm not an especially spiritual person, but that's the closest I get
Howard,
to being spiritual.
We wish you a ton of success with your new book, the concept of bringing together all these different, like the humility of understanding that one person isn't going to solve this, and that you want to hear the different voices, and even the way that you're putting the book out through your Kickstarter. We really wish you a lot of success with that. We understand that our approach is not easily kind of to digest, or seems a little out of the box. It's unorthodox.
Oh, it's fascinating. I'd love to talk to another hour about it and ask you questions.
So let's do that. Let's make sure that we do that. Maybe at a different stage. I know you have maybe another month or two going, with the book. So maybe before the book comes out, if there's some kind of development, we can discuss where it's going.
This has been fascinating.
Yeah. So let's keep the conversation going, and try and find what it is that we have, what is that good future that we can have together. Once we must deal with the problem at hand now, the anti-Semitism at hand. We need to understand it. And then we also need a very compelling future. We can't just end with anti-Semitism. We need to have
positive definition
Some
of us
positive
Jews
at the end once we get through this. So I
not
wish
those who survived. Yeah.
I don't know if you're a touchy guy, but I'd like to give you a hug and say thank you for being here with us.
Here's a virtual hug.
Okay.
Well,
Thank you
Howard,
for-
where can people help with the book? Where do they go?
Go to, well, if they go to my X feed, there's a the pinned, I guess, tweet or X post, whatever you call it, is a link to the Kickstarter.
So that's
page.
at Howard Lovy.
At Howard_Lovy, or just Google me. It's all
Okay.
over. I'm easily Googleable.
Yes, you are.
Easily Googled. Amazing. So this was another Thejewfunction. I love how every conversation is different, but we all eventually reach a very special point. We thank Howard, Seth, follow us, share it. We'll be here, God willing, as they say, every Sunday live. And if not, with a recorded episode, but we're continuing this together. So thank you so much, everyone who's been with us, and thank you, Howard.
Thanks,
And
Howard.
See you, everyone.
Thank you for
next
having
week.
me. Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye-bye.